Hillary Clinton is heading into Super Tuesday after a stunning victory in yesterday's South Carolina primary, taking 74% of the vote in a state that Bernie Sanders so fully conceded he didn't even bother to give a speech afterwards. And while her second straight win has revived the media's talk of inevitability, she's still dogged by the honesty questions, as we see in one of her many interviews on MSNBC.
We've been talking about how calculating you were and how it seems to be not the person that we know personally.
This has kind of come to me over the last months because, you know, it is painful. It's hurtful to have people say, oh, I don't trust her, or don't know why she's doing it.
So, Amy, the flip side of the Trump question, the press was saying about a week ago Hillary was in trouble, she had no theme, she wasn't drawing the crowds, generating excitement. Bernie Sanders, 2 big wins, back to calling her inevitable, but there's still the question we just saw in that Morning Joe interview.
Right. I think all of the above can be true, and we've seen with Hillary Clinton's campaign that she has not generated the same type of just native excitement that Bernie Sanders has, yet she does have the machine behind her. We did see in South Carolina this, you know, landslide victory.
Right. Is the press tough on her? We talked about the press and Trump in the last block.
I think the press is, they're not as tough on her as they are with conservatives when you look at the email scandal problem that she is under investigation.
Which was broken by the New York Times.
Which was broken by the New York Times, but a lot of conservatives would say this should be disqualifying, and yet you have the New York Times saying, please, Mrs. Clinton, do answer the questions. Like,
so you can
drop out.
You can pick that up, but also address whether this, you know, just stunningly massive South Carolina win, I mean, it's not, a landslide doesn't even do it justice. Is this counted in part because everybody in the press expected Hillary to win big?
They should have expected it for months and months. It was obviously coming, but they totally ignored it. Even this narrative that Bernie Sanders is turning on part of the Obama coalition, well, the one part he never has been able to turn on was African Americans, which was a pretty big part of it. And so I think the coverage has sort of been one-sided.
Do you think the press kind of was complicit in generating artificial excitement? Because, look, Bernie Sanders had essentially tied her in Iowa, had a big win in New Hampshire, but the Clinton campaign always said, well, those were the 2 weakest states, and once we got to the bigger, more diverse states, she would blow them away. So far, that seems to be happening. So the press kind of gets swept up in the Sanders momentum.
Yeah, and I think fed it, and I think there's the same reason. Want the contest, you know, and that in a contest is going to get more people interested in watching than one that's over. And so now the problem is, they're going into it's over again. It was always going to be this way. It was always going to be this way, and they were pretty brutal on her up through, and also I think used the Sanders surge in Iowa and New Hampshire to tie all the stuff that was going against her, you know, on honesty and all those things into that narrative.
Right. But an interesting twist, because editorial pages don't have the clout that they used to, but a lot of attention for the New York Times liberal editorial page saying Hillary Clinton is stonewalling and should release transcripts of her paid speeches to Wall Street groups. That includes the $675,000 she got from Goldman Sachs. What did you make of that?
I make of that the New York Times as a whole has taken a viewpoint, for whatever reason, that seems to be less pro-Hillary Clinton. They've been breaking stories that you might not have seen them break against her. Maybe 5 years ago they wouldn't have done it. They're doing now.
So you're saying both news pages and opinion pages?
Yes. And I want to point out, you know, the news, I think, instead of deciding which narrative to adopt du jour, should be doing more, we should be doing more of our own original reporting. And if you look at Nevada, I just thought this was interesting. I didn't see it reported anywhere. Even though they have, according to their website of the elections office, 100,000 more Democrat registered voters, Trump won the Republican Party with a huge margin, something like 70,000 votes, whereas, was it 50 or 70? She won with 6,000 votes on the Democrat side, even though there are so many more registered Democrats there, and I think that's just a narrative that was not put out there by anybody.
I've got time for just a short comment on the Hillary coverage. Do you think it's going to remain critical? You think it's too soft?
Well, personally, I think it's too soft, and I think her feet do need to be held to the fire. But in defense of Bernie Sanders, we have an independent, self-declared socialist who did far better than anyone would have thought a year ago.
Anybody, and that includes me, and he deserves credit for that. All right, Joe Trippi, Amy Holmes, Cheryl Atkinson, great to see you.